My name is Josh. And yeah, I think I saw, not the trailer, but I don't know if it's on Netflix or where I saw it, but I saw like the icon for that movie, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And and I had this picture come into my mind that it's like, and how many times am I looking for God? And I'm always wondering, like, God, like, where are you? Why don't you just show yourself to me? Um, but a little bit about myself. I have been in recovery for 3.5 years now. And I should say I've been sober for 3.5 years now. And the point of recovery, I don't think is necessarily to get sober. I think that that's kind of what brings us in. It's like, we come in due to a crisis of some sort. And sometimes it's like, I just want that crisis to be done. But when you go through recovery of the 12 steps, or in this case, the LifeLab program, it's really to bring us into a relationship with God. Like that is the purpose of recovery. And this, the LifeLab way is one model or one method to do that. But as we come into this, I'm still left with like, why do I find it difficult to grasp God? Or why do I find it difficult to understand God? It's like, why do I seem like it's like I want to hear from him or have these experiences, but it's like it seems to happen to other people, but not for me. And I guess for a little bit about, my background with that is, I grew up, religious, going to church, and, I always tried to fit God into what I was doing. So it's like, okay, I'm going to find God, but it's like, it'd be like, but God didn't somehow meet my needs, or God doesn't answer my prayer request, or God doesn't fit into my schedule. And then it's like, then I get upset because things don't end up the way I want them to end up. And it's like, and I had this thing, this idea, I believe, this belief system that it's like, well, obviously I just need to be better. Because obviously if I was better and if I was more well-behaved, or if I had, addictions under wrap, and it's like, maybe I was more spiritual somehow, maybe then, I would have, my needs met, or like what I thought was my needs met, or my prayer requests answered, or my schedule, like God would just fit into all this stuff. But as I've come to understand God is, and I say that in the sense that like, I feel like I still only like, I just understand like a little sliver, a little grasp, but God is no closer to me today than he was 5 years ago, than he was when I was a baby. Like, it's like I'm a fish and I'm in water, and God is the water. Like, God is all around me, but there's things that I do to disconnect myself from God, and I think a big thing to start is fear. There's fear of, man, if I really let God in, what could happen? Like, is God actually going to make me, speak in front of people? Or is God going to make me, marry that person? Or is God going to give me that job? Or is God going to make me move to the middle of the desert somewhere? Or maybe there's a fear of what isn't going to happen. And it's like, oh man, it's like, I've hit this crisis in life. And it's like, and if you're telling me that it's like, I got to put all my eggs in this one basket of trusting God, well, what if that doesn't follow through? Like, then where am I left? And I think we can be paralyzed by that fear. But there's one section, and I want to take, this is coming out of the, LifeLab course. So if you guys have taken it, or maybe you haven't taken it, but it is a spiritual awakening recovery program that we have. And I have gone through it a couple times. And there's this one section at the beginning that it talks about pride. And I remember seeing this and being like, I never thought I was prideful. Because I'm like, okay, prideful is the one that's like, they're kind of peacocking all over the place. And it's like, like I'd say I'm the opposite. I thought I'd be like a little bit more insecure and self-conscious and worrisome. And it's like, but when I start looking at the list of what's described, it's like, oh my goodness, pride, control, like pride, like I'm a very prideful person, I've realized, and I think pride is one of the root causes, one of my root issues. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but I want to talk about several of them that I can really identify with. Um, Resentments and self-pity. When I'm hurt or threatened, it's like, I either get angry or I feel sorry for myself. If I don't get what I want when I want, I can react of two ways. I can be angry, and maybe I'm angry for a while, and then that all of a sudden turns into I feel sorry for myself, and it's like I turns into poor little old me's, and that becomes this thing that it's like, oh, no one's focusing on me, because I'm making it all about me, or maybe I find that I'm critical and I have this critical spirit, and in my case, it's like I usually don't criticize because it's like something is harming the common good. But I actually can start criticizing individuals. And I'm criticizing individuals or maybe institutions because I don't think that they're operating the way I think it should be. And I think the best place that I would see that is in my home. Like, what do you mean you're doing the dishes that way? Or you're cleaning, the bathroom that way? Or you're not, what do you mean you're not making the bed? Like, and it's like, and I impose this way that it's like, I'm criticizing you, thinking that it's like, well, this is how it should be done. And I'm actually destroying you. And as I destroy you, I'm actually building myself up because obviously I have the right answer. And obviously I know what the best thing to do is. That's a very, as I think about it, that's a very prideful thing to do. There's courting temptation. If I'm early in recovery, should I be putting myself in scenarios that might not be the best for me? If my issue is porn, should I have free access to computer and cell phone? If my issue is, alcohol, should I be going, to certain restaurants or bars? If I'm an adrenaline addict, I'm not. So maybe others will speak into it, but it's like, should I maybe be a mediator in conflict somewhere? Maybe in early recovery, maybe not. But I think what happens is I can get a little prideful and think, oh, maybe you're a couple days in or a couple weeks in or a couple months in, and it's like, well, I got this now. I'm good, and it's like, and all of a sudden, yeah, I don't think I've actually honestly or humbly admitted that I'm really powerless over this thing. And I use my faulty reasoning to allow myself to go into that area. My pride distorts my judgment. Like, what do you mean I can't go to that bar or I can't go to that restaurant? Like, all my friends are going there, but you don't want me to have any friends right now? You like, it's like, you don't want me to have any social life? What do you mean you don't want me to, what do you mean you don't want to have a cell phone? Like, I need a cell phone for work, or I need a computer. Like, what do you mean you don't want to have that stuff? And it's like, and I can reason that stuff, but really it's the pride thinking that it's like, I got this, I'm set. Another form of pride. And this one, I never would have thought this, but I saw it and it really resonated with me, but it's about worry. And I remember as a child, this one really resonates because as a child, I remember I was having some learning difficulties at school. So I was brought to, I don't know where I was brought to, but I was brought to a center somewhere that they're going to test you for certain things. And I don't know why it was kept, but it's like, I remember this, whatever it was, like, I think I might've been like 7, 8 years old. No, maybe a little older than that. But I remember several years ago, maybe 5, 6 years ago, I remember receiving, like, I don't know, my parents gave me like the document of like, here's what came out of that like appointment. I'm like, why would you give this to me? Like, this is highlight. It feels like you're highlighting all the negative, what I see as the negative aspects of my childhood or my life. But I remember there was this one section that it said, like, Joshua was a very friendly boy, but he tends to worry a lot. He tends to worry that it's like he's not going to get things right. And the worry is this, exaggerated sense of one's own responsibility. So I can take that into today and being like, I forget, or I can refuse to admit that the outcomes of every action of life is God's responsibility. I'm just responsible for the work. I'm responsible to plan out the work, to execute the work, but I'm not responsible for the results. But often I take that weight on, that it's like, I need to figure out exactly how this is going to look and what's the outcome of this. And if that outcome doesn't happen, oh my goodness, like, I obviously failed. So that's pride right there. That's pride thinking that it's like, oh my goodness, like, that it's like, I'm the one responsible to orchestrate all this stuff together. We can see pride with lack of serenity. And do you guys see that some of this stuff is connecting together? Like, a lot of this stuff is connected together, like lack of serenity. I can find pride in my life because if I don't have serenity, why not? Usually it's because I'm trying to arrange my life and my affairs the way I want them. And I find myself more often than not full of conflict and really discontented. Discontentment meaning, it's this longing for something better than what the present situation is. And if I'm always looking for that next thing that's going to make me feel good, yeah, I'm not happy. I'm not in the moment. It's like, because the Spirit of God is in the is in the present. And if I have no peace, it's like, I'm not actually sitting still in this moment. I can find pride through slips, through slips of progress, where it's like, I can go on this journey, and after weeks or months, or even years, yeah, I've put the work in, but I can forget that my progress is a gift of God. And all of a sudden I can be like, well, it's like, look what I did. I did this work, and this is my outcome. And it's like, and all of a sudden it's like, I'm left with this belief, this prideful belief that it's like, Josh has somehow done all of this good stuff to pull himself up and pulled, like, what's that saying? Like, you pulled yourself up by the bootstraps. It's like, and I can live in this delusion that all this stuff around me is like, look what I did. I can be prideful if I have difficulty submitting to God's will. There can be a difficulty. This is hard. Like, this is something that it's like, I think for myself, we can often say the right thing. I can often, I've been around enough that I can say the right thing, being like, well, it's like, of course, it's like, God's the director, and I'm gonna follow God's will and all that stuff. But it's like, when it actually comes down to it, does my life follow suit? Do my actions follow suit? Do my thoughts, when no one is looking, do my thoughts follow suit? Am I living in a way that it's like, I believe that God knows better, or am I living in a way that it's like, Josh knows better? That it's like, yeah, you know what? It's like, this is how I need my day to look, because this is what I want to get out of it. And right away, if that's my mindset, that's very prideful, because I'm putting myself at the front of the show. I'm putting myself as the center character. And it's like, and God, you can follow in and kind of like pave over the bumpy spots as need be. But that's not how I'm designed. I'm actually designed to follow God where God leads me, not to tell God to follow me wherever I want to go. But there's this thing that it's like, I believe, I said it earlier, that it's like, God is no closer to me today than he was 5 years ago, than he was when I was a kid. But I think what happens is, life happens, and when life happens, I don't think, like, maybe intentionally for some of us, and I think for a lot of us, it's like, this is unintentional. Like, I don't, like, it's not like I'm necessarily trying to be malicious about this, but life happens, and I almost like, it's almost like I'm a fish in the Gulf of Mexico and there's an oil spill, and it's like, and I got to protect myself somehow. Like, and I don't know what there's no biology to this. I don't know if this is true, but it's like, it's almost like that fish creates like a protective barrier to protect it from the oil. And I think that's what I do with life, to like somehow prove myself in this world, and when I do that, these are actually blocks to God. That God is no closer to me. God is still as close to me, I should say. But it's like, but these blocks are actually clouding my vision to hear from God, or to see God. It's like I have a lot of extra earwax in, and it's like, and I'm not hearing things as clearly. And I see this perfectly because I compare it to my kids. And you see the innocence of children, and they say things, they see things, and they hear things that are not of this physical world. Like, there's no other reasoning to it, that it's like, it is just a spiritual thing that they're going through. But the oldest is 5, and it's like, there's an innocence that's there. So they're not clouded with, they don't have all these blocks that are put up at this point. So we're really, my wife and I, we're really trying to, like, push him in this direction of, like, what does it mean to, like, hear God, and we do things. And it's like, I remember when they were like younger, when I was like 3, it's like, again, it's trying to train them in this way. But it's like, sometimes it's like, yeah, God gave me a picture of a red fire truck. All right, cool. But it's come to something where I'm like, the other night I went to put them to bed, and my son's in bed, and I went to say something. I forget what it was. I just went to say something, and all of a sudden he's just like, shh, not right now. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, God is speaking to me. I'm like, all right, cool. Well, I'll just I'll sit back. I'll sit back here for a second. And I waited a couple minutes, and then he's like, okay, all done now. And I'm like, oh, cool. I'm like, can you tell me, like what did God say to you? He's like, yeah, I can't tell you that. It's like, yeah, that's just between me and God. And I'm like, cool, like awesome, but there was a time before that, and I don't know what led into it, but I asked my wife if I could share this, but she was going through some things, and my son just said, Mom, God just told me that I'm a special boy, and God wants you to know that your husband loves you. And he didn't say he wants you to know that Daddy loves you. It's like, the wording that he used was so specific and was so direct that it's like, it was from God, that that's what my wife needed to hear right at that moment. And he's able to receive those things and hear from those things because he doesn't have all these blocks, that are blocking him off from the Spirit of God. So I give you that list earlier about fear and about pride, because it's like, if we see that some of these things are popping up in our life, if I don't have serenity, if I find that I'm being critical, if I find that, I'm boasting, or if I find that, it's difficult, submitting to things, if I see that this stuff is popping up, well, it's like, yeah, maybe that's a good indicator as to why you know, you're not hearing from the Spirit of God. And it gives me an opportunity to dig into some of this stuff as to why. You know, there's a story in the Big Book, and it's this guy. He he was a guy that, you know, he went to Sunday school and he did all the right stuff when he was a kid, and then it's like, you know, then war came, and then post war, it's like he had some failed businesses and alcoholism and you know, suicide attempts. So he'd really been beat up, you know, but he didn't want anything to do with God. But I'm just going to read the story, and it says, I'm going to read the paragraph or two, but it says, one night, when confined in a hospital, this man was approached by an alcoholic who had known a spiritual experience. Our friend's gorge rose as he bitterly cried out, "If there is a God, he certainly hasn't done anything for me." Again, right there, I can identify that. That's how I thought God was here to just meet my needs. But later, alone in his room, he asked himself this question: is it possible that all the religious people I've known are wrong? So he has this moment that life circumstances have gone bad enough for him that it's like this it's almost like this little split in the wood. Like there's just a slight little opening right here of like, maybe all the religious people I've known have got it wrong. While pondering the answer, he felt as though he lived in hell. Then, like a thunderbolt, a great thought came, and it crowded out all else. Who are you to say there is no God? This man recounts that he tumbled out of bed to his knees. In a few seconds, he was overwhelmed by conviction of the presence of God. It poured over and through him with the certainty and majesty of a great tide at flood. The barriers he had built through the years were swept away. He stood in the presence of infinite power and love. He had stepped from bridge to shore. For the first time, he lived in conscious companionship with his Creator. And I love that. It's like the barriers he had built through the years were swept away. That God is no closer to him then than what he was in his active alcoholism than he was when he was as a child. But yet he had these barriers that had been built up through the years. And it's my responsibility. I can't rely on everyone else to do it for me. It's my responsibility to see what those barriers are, to do the work. And then I leave God with the results. And when I leave God with the results, I have to step out in faith. And that can be very difficult right there. Because I don't know the outcome and I don't know what it will look like. But I need to have faith that God is going to show himself to me. And that I'll be able to stand in the presence of infinite power and love. And to close, I want to read one last thing. And this is from one of the co-founders of Alcoholics Anonymous. And this is for us who struggle, I think, with either a belief in God or struggle with really just turning our will and our lives over to the care of God. But it reads, if you think you are an atheist, an agnostic, a skeptic, or have any other form of intellectual pride which keeps you from accepting this book, I feel sorry for you. If you still think you're strong enough to beat the game alone, that is your affair. But if you really and truly want to quit drinking liquor for good and all, enter whatever you want there. If you want to quit smoking weed, if you want to quit looking at porn, if you want to be emotionally sober, good and for all, and sincerely feel that you must have some help, we know that we have an answer for you. It never fails. If you go about it with one half the zeal you have been in the habit of showing when you were getting another drink, your Heavenly Father will never let you down. So that's the promise that I want to leave you guys with today, that it can be scary because I don't necessarily know the outcome, but there's a lot of areas in my life that I've operated in where I don't know the outcome. But rest assured in the promise that your heavenly Father will never let you down. And when I put the work in to God, what are these blocks? What what are the things here that are keeping me from you? And I put that work in, I get to leave the results in God's hands. And God will never let me down, and God will show himself as he sees fit. So thank you for allowing me to share today. Be blessed and be of service.